Welcome to Rocksolid Productions, where in this video we are going to go from attic to awesome sauce. We have a new in the box, well not new in the box, but new to me, Super NES Jr. There's a story here, stay tuned. Hey everybody, Gary here with Rocksolid Productions. Now before we get started, I just want to take a second and say thank you for stopping by and checking out what we have going on here on the channel. I really do appreciate it. If you like what you see here, I invite you to check out some of the other videos that we have here on the channel, including other mod videos that we've done with the Super NES Jr. and the N64. And if you really like what you see here, do me a huge favor. Hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button, and that bell notification. And what I want to know from you, the Super NES is my favorite system of all time. What is your favorite video game system of all time? For me, what I loved about the Super NES is it was just such a beautiful progression from what we had on the original NES. The graphics were amazing, the sound was awesome. Super Castlevania 4 is still one of the greatest soundtracks of all time. You had Mode 7, you had great stories, you had great games. There's so much to love about this system, including Earthworm Jim. So this guy here I picked up locally from another retro gamer that basically got told by his parents, get your stuff out of the attic. So he listed it on Facebook groups, and I managed to go ahead and I didn't snipe it. He gave me a good deal. I'm not going to tell you what I paid for it because quite frankly it doesn't matter to this point. But why am I talking about a new Super NES Jr. when I have one? Had one. Yeah, in a recent mod I had some issues with what I thought was the system and my work that I was doing. And I soldered and resoldered and unsoldered. Well, I ruined the RGB mod chip that I was using. Yes. And then I went ahead and I removed the mod chip. I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna run my Super NES the way it is, because I pulled my chip out to try to save this other one that I was doing for someone else. And I'm not even getting composite video out of my Super NES Jr. anymore. Yes. So that left me looking for a Super NES Jr. Why Super NES Jr. versus a regular Super NES? Well, first of all, I like the aesthetic of the system. There is that. Second of all, by and large, it actually does have a better picture output than the original Super NES. The problem is it doesn't output component video, RGB, or SCART right out of the box. Well, we have a way to fix that, and that's what this little guy here. No, it's not a dime bag. This is one of Voultar's RGB mod kits for the Super NES Jr. It is very easy to install if you know what you're doing, and there's also a couple other things to do, such as replacing a specific capacitor on the board, getting everything all wired up. You can wire it up for S-Video too. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this and throw it on the bench. I'm going to show you everything that we got. Unfortunately, he did not have Yoshi's Island in the box, which is what this came with. And the person I bought it from, he was the original owner. So very similar to like my Virtual Boy that I bought a few years back. I'm excited that I am able to get this from the original owner who had this back in the 90s. He bought it because he wanted to play Harvest Moon, which he still has, and he knows what it's worth. And no, I'm not paying what it's worth for Harvest Moon on here. But in addition to everything else we're going to do with this mod, I'm also checking out a new soldering iron. This is actually the, I think it's KSGER is how it's pronounced. This is what Voultar's been using for a long time, and he does like tons of mod work. And what I was looking at with the Trackpower Soldering Iron that I had been using versus what I had seen him use in his videos, and I learn every time I watch something that he does, is the tips that he was using. And if the tip is in, it counts, by the way, Bird of Prey 5. But it was allowing him to do a lot more finer detail work than what I was capable of doing with my larger tips. So I'm hoping this will give me a more precise control over the area that I am soldering on the board. And yes, I threw in that soldering just for Voultar if he does happen to see this. I will have links to this. It's available. He's got it on his website. I got mine through Amazon. It's the same thing. Be wary though, there are some knockoffs of this. This is pretty much, looking through all the specs, what his system that he uses is. The one thing of note, I did buy this off of Amazon, and again, I'll have a link to that if you want to check it out. There is no power cord included. However, it's just a standard 3-prong, like what you would have for a laptop or a PC power supply. I've got boatloads of them, so I'm not really worried about that. If you don't have them, again, I'll have a link to that in a pin post down below. So we're going to unbox this, we're going to take it apart, we're going to clean it, and we're going to RGB mod it. Let's go. So here we have the new to me Super NES Jr box. Man, this thing is in such great shape. Looking at the top here, I mean, there's no like feathering or anything like that. There's no real discoloration. This is in just immaculate shape completely. Got a little bit of discoloration here, but not terribly. You know, a little bit of signs of wear and tear around the flaps and whatnot. But overall, just, man, I am so excited to have this system in the collection here. And we are going to take a look at the system first and foremost here, because one of the things I do want to show you is the fact that it does indeed have some signs of yellowing, which, I mean, after 25-30 years, not unexpected, but still pretty good shape. Also in the box, I mean, the manuals. The manuals are here. Now, it does have the manual for Yoshi's Island 2, but that's not the game that he actually had with it. It's actually Super Mario RPG. So, very cool there. We do have the controller itself. Everything looks and feels like it's in good shape. The actual Nintendo power brick, again, very good shape. There's no frayed wires or anything on here. And then we do have the AV cables in here. Now, one of the things that I'm going to do before we do any mods is we are going to test the system. And again, looking at the styrofoam, it's in awesome shape itself. So we admittedly have a hodgepodge jumbled mess of stuff here. I have my Lepow 15.6-inch portable monitor here hooked up to a RetroTink because it can do composite and component, and we're going to power on the system and make sure it works. That's a good sign. And it's responding and everything. Good deal. So we know that the system itself works. Now what we're going to do is we're going to crack it open, we're going to clean it up, and we're going to do our mod. Alright, so let's crack this guy open. And to do so, you're going to need what's called either a game bit or a security bit. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4 screws on the bottom here that we will have to remove. Now the back screw holes are a little bit deeper, so I do need to use a longer bit for that. We're going to just open this up. I'm going to use the lid to kind of keep all my screws and everything together. That way I don't wind up with a screw loose. Ah! Now that we are inside the system, we have to remove a few more screws. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 total screws. And the silver ones go in the back up here. And there's one here and one there that we'll have to remove. And just like that, those guys come out pretty easily. Again, we're going to throw our screws in our lid. There's one more left, and that's this one here. Now, I've often found that this one is really hard to reach with my power screwdriver, so for that, I just break out the manual one. That way, too, you make sure that you're not stripping out the heads at all. And with those screws out, the system should pop right out. There we go. Now what I'm going to do with both the lid and with this part is I'm going to take the screws out, but I'm going to wash them just in some soapy water just to make sure that we get all the dust and crud and everything out of them. So overall the system is in pretty good shape. There's a lot of times you'll see like crud and corrosion build up on the cartridge connector. That looks good. There's not a whole lot of dust in here either. I mean, overall this looks really quite clean. So what we're going to do with this is we are going to use one of Voultar's RGB mod boards because, quite frankly, they're awesome. They work really well, they're super easy to install, and they're inexpensive, and that's what it looks like right there. Now, one thing on this board versus some of his older ones is if you see the 3 via holes on the top here, there's no conductor going through, so it's basically, you know, those 3, that 1, 2, 3, that they're not really doing anything. But everything else, I mean, very simple, very straightforward, very clean. And this will basically get soldered onto place right here. But before we do so, we have some excesses that we need to trim off. So looking at the board here, there are some longer legs coming through. We're just going to snip that one there, snip that one there, snip that one there, snip that one there. Now from here, we should be able to lay Voultar's board right on those pins, right like that. So that's what that will wind up looking like, more or less. So if you look here, there's those two solder points, there's a lot of excess blobby solder on there. I may try to reflow that to get this to sit a little bit flatter. But before we really get started, we're going to take a look at the old versus the new and why I'm making a change here. So this is my Trackpower digital soldering station. I've used the analog version for years. I've had this one for about 18 months now. Now for this iron, I do have a couple different tips here, and for what I normally do with like RC work, works great, but for working on like fine stuff like this, it's too big, I have found, and that's one of the reasons I was looking to make a change. And the change that I've made has been to go with this guy here, the T12 soldering station. Now, one thing you will need to do with this soldering iron station is the fact, well, two things. First of all, it doesn't come with an iron holder, so we're just going to use our old one. Also does not come with a power cord, so we do have one of those that we are going to utilize. Now, for the tip, the one thing that I have found, at least watching Voultar's videos, is he is using this blade sort of tip quite a bit, and it just provides a really consistent performance when he is drag soldering as such. This iron comes with a number of different tips, which I was glad to see, so depending on what I'm soldering on, I can use it for different sorts of things. And then yeah, that goes right in there just fine without an issue. Plug it in for power. And to turn it on, there's just a switch on the back. So looks like it's set for 300 degrees. Holy cow, that thing heats up quickly. So the first thing I'm going to try to do is see if I can't clean up that little bit right there that was like it looked like it was gooped together. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to just apply a little bit of no clean solder flux there. Clean our tip, and I'm going to just introduce a little bit of solder here. We're just going to drag it on the surface to see if we can't reflow some of this, and actually seems to be doing a pretty good job of just touching it real quick and being able to reflow all of that solder. So now that we have the excess little bit of solder cleaned up off of there, we are going to place our board right on these pins. Now make sure that you do have them on the right pins, not saying why I may have done that myself in the past and gotten it on the wrong ones, but there you see it just sits flush on the pins right like that. We're going to turn this guy around and we are going to tack this into place. And again, we'll just put a little bit of no clean solder flux on there. We cleaned our tip, and now we're going to just tin it here and introduce a little bit of solder onto that first via. Come on there. We do have a little bit of a bridge here, which we'll clean up. So one of the things I did was I went back and I read the instructions on the soldering iron itself, and I thought that it maxed out at 300 degrees, and it actually doesn't. So I was able to go back, raise the temperature, and select the right tip. And there you can see we have nice clean solder joints here on all of our pins. The important thing to remember is they should be nice and shiny. If they look dull, go back and hit them again, but overall these look pretty good. And again, these three pins on the very end, that one, that one, you don't actually use. All right, so next up we're going to go from that, and that. So that's B, G, R, C, S, and we are going to go to the corresponding B, G, R, C, S on this side here. And for that, we just have some 4-conductor wire here. And what I am going to do is I'm going to separate the conductors here first. So we have our conductors separated. I'm going to kind of mush them back together so we can strip the wire here. Next up, I'm going to take and tin the conductors. First and foremost, I'm going to add just a little bit of flux to each of them and introduce just a little bit of solder. 10-year tip first. Just like that. Now we're going to take and lay these in here into these vias, and it should theoretically pretty much just drop right in. So if you see here, I have each of those installed in a via. We're just going to tack these down real quick. Now I did put a little bit of flux on each of those. A couple drops of no clean solder flux there. All right, and those joints are sufficiently tacked down. So we have our joints soldered into place. As you can see here, they're really not moving. We've got to just tack down our other wire here. All right, so I also tend to leave my lead a little bit longer going to the board. I've already stripped it down, but I am going to separate the conductors a little bit just to make sure that I can solder everything without too much of a hassle. I apologize for hairy knuckles in the way. So we have our conductors separated. Now we're going to tin them after we go ahead and just dunk them in some flux. So now we're going to lay our leads down here, and we're just going to tack them down one by one. There's one. There's two. There's three. And come on, you. Bring our tweezers in here. Now, in theory, we're done with the RGB mod part of this, but the last thing that we're going to do is we are going to replace capacitor C11. That is the ghosting capacitor fix. So the capacitor we're going to remove is this guy here, C11, and you can use just your soldering iron to heat that up, pop it right off, and when you pop the new one on, it's non-polarized, so you don't need to worry about, there we go, I'll give you a little bit brighter look here. You don't need to worry about getting the polarity right or wrong. Just like that, the old one is off. Now, this I have found in the past to be difficult because I've had that capacitor stick to the iron. We're going to put a drop of no clean, actually 2 drops there of no clean solder flux. Clean off our tip. Introduce some fresh solder to the tip. And I like using an X-Acto blade to hold this down into place as I am soldering. It is a very small component and kind of a pain in the rear. Okay, we got that side. Got that side. And it's not moving. So we are now ready to go ahead and hook up our HD retrovision cables and see, did we screw it up? But before we do that, the one last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take some isopropyl alcohol and a toothbrush, and even though it's no clean solder flux, you can kind of see the crap that's on the board here. I am going to clean that off a little bit. You can also use electronic component cleaner. So like, for example, I have my Dynamite Magnum Force here, which is just an electronic component cleaner. So spray down the board, and I've got a brush here that I use just to clean everything off. Now before I seal it up, we're going to test it out just to make sure. So kind of weird lighting right now, but I've got our LiPo monitor set up again with our RetroTink 2X Pro. We're using HD retrovision cables to connect our Super NES Jr to the monitor here. Fingers crossed. Please work, please work, please work. And I'm going to turn off this light here so you can get a really good idea of what it looks like. That's a good look. Now, aspect ratio is 16:9. That's because that's the way the monitor is set. I can go ahead and change that. But damn, this looks good. All right, so I didn't kill it. That's the biggest thing. Now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna put the system back together. So very excited that it worked. Yes, I was concerned after what happened with my last system that I could have screwed up another one. It happens. It really screwed with my confidence, I'll tell you that much. Which is why people who have asked me lately if I would do some more mods kind of backed off for a little bit, but now I feel better. So first things first is we will get our silver screws in place. I want to make sure that I get those screws all pulled together. Now I did wipe down the case, but I did not like retrobrite it or anything. I thought about it, but no. And again, I always find it useful to put this screw in first just because it is the biggest pain to put in. And this I do by hand. And I don't know if you noticed it, but I actually unscrewed slightly before screwing into the system. That way I wasn't cutting new threads. Oh, one other thing. There is a way to solder up and get S-Video working on here. Since I've got the HD Retrovision cables, I don't care about it, so I'm not doing it. But you would normally pull off this heatsink here, disconnect the MOSFET there from the screw, and then you solder to this pin here. This chip is how you would do it. All right, we almost have that back together. The RF shield back in. Nintendo sure love them some RF shields, I'll tell you that much. When you hear it click, you know that you're back in the threads. Power switch in the off position, power switch in the off position, seal it back up. Get that one going. And again, I prefer when I am reassembling a system, I like to do it by hand versus with my drill driver. Just, you've got better control. I do sometimes use the drill driver though, and then just set the clutch super loose. Man, I gotta tell you, I am thrilled that we got this guy up and running. Let's wrap it up. So there you have it. We've taken our new, to us, Super NES Jr. and taken it from the attic to awesome. Look how great this looks. Yes, it's kind of dark right now because of the way that I have everything set so that the screen will show up on camera. Man, this is sharp, pixel, perfect, beautiful, and it's going through my RetroTink 2X Pro right now, and it looks so good. And I have to thank Voultar for a couple of things. First and foremost, thanks for having a great mod that people with just about any soldering skills can go ahead and put in. I do hate putting the RGB into those vias on the board though. It is such a pain in the rear end. I do also want to thank them for giving me the heads up on this soldering iron. Now, it's not perfect. It has a few things that it's gonna take me a little bit to get used to. But man, this thing is teeny tiny and super capable. I'm actually pretty impressed with it. It took me a little bit to kind of get familiar with the menus. The iron was too cold when I started out with it. It was only at 300 degrees. I bumped it up to 400. That was perfect for what I was trying to do here. And as you can see, it flowed the solder perfectly, and we have a great looking picture here. Now, if you do have an interest in getting your system RGB modded, go ahead and email me. I am doing mods again. It was one of those things where, man, I was so mad at myself when I ruined my other system. And what that boiled down to, it wasn't a problem with my technique. It wasn't a problem with anything that I did. The system that I did the mod on actually worked perfectly. The problem I had was with an HDMI cable. The cable going from my original RetroTink into my TV, into my capture card and everything, that took a dump on me. So I'm sitting here and I'm scratching my head trying to soldering and desoldering and resoldering and unsoldering and soldering again. I even soldered once or twice too. Couldn't get it figured out, couldn't get it figured out. Then I bypassed all my upscalers. I went actually from the RetroTink that I was using, I went into my OSSC and it worked. So it just goes to show when you are having problems, take your time, go through everything that's going on, because the problems that I had nothing to do with the mod that I performed, and it actually delayed me getting that system back out to the person that I did the mod for, and I felt kind of bad about that. In fact, I gave him a pretty substantial discount on that, like free $99, so I ate the cost on that one. The soldering iron worked well. Again, I want to get used to it a little bit more. It has a lot more in the menu system than what I'm used to, so I'm interested in checking it out. According to Voultar 2, there is also an upgraded handle doing a little bit of checking. There is an aluminum one available. I would think that would transfer a lot of heat, but who knows? I do also wish that it came with a power cord. I mean, it's probably 40 or 50 cents to the manufacturer to include that in there. I understand why they didn't do it, because then they can go ahead, have one SKU, ship it worldwide. I do also wish that they had some kind of a base. This is actually my Trackpower base. I may end up picking up another one just for use with this iron, because it does fit, but it's kind of loose. Now, if you do have any other comments or questions about anything that you've seen here today, anything about modding systems, or anything retro gaming in general, as always, feel free to email me at rocksolidmail@gmail.com. If you have any questions and you want to go ahead and get a quote for mod service, that's where I can help answer your questions there too. You can also hit me up on Twitter at RockSolidStudios. We are on Facebook at facebook.com/RockSolidProductions, and Instagram at instagram.com/RockSolidProductionsGK. Now, if you are looking to pick up some of the stuff that we used here today, for example, the soldering iron that we have here, the solder, the tools, and whatnot, I will have a link to our Amazon affiliate store where you can check that stuff out. Now, we are using, like I mentioned, the RetroTink 2X Pro to hook up to our TV, going through HD Retrovision component video cables. Those are all available through CastleManiaGames.com. And the cool thing is, the HD Retrovision cables, they are back in stock after a long time of not being in stock. You also earn what's called Castle Cash anytime you buy anything at CastleManiaGames.com. It's his rewards program where the more you spend, the more you earn and save on future purchases. You can also use promo code ROCKSOLID10 to save 10% off of most items on the website. If you are looking for the mod board that we installed, the RGB board, head on over to Voultar's mod shop. He also has that same type of kit for the N64, and he has some really cool stuff for like the TurboGrafx and for many of the Sega systems that are out there too, or Sega if you are from down under, Adrian. But this is awesome. This is intriguing. I'm excited to do more work with it. My name is Gary. This has been Rock Solid Productions, and we just took a Super NES Jr from attic to awesome here with Voultar's RGB mod kit and the KSGER new soldering iron. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you for watching this video. If you would like to support the future of Rock Solid Productions, you can do so by visiting our Patreon page at patreon.com/rocksolid. For as little as $1 a month, $12 a year, you'll get early access to all of our video content, exclusive content, and a whole lot more. You can also become a channel member here on YouTube for as little as $1.99 a month, and with that, you get a badge next to your name when you comment or post on the channel, and you are acknowledged whether you are a channel member or a Patreon supporter at the end of each and every one of our videos. You can also support the channel by visiting our Teespring store on screen now, where we have t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, masks, cell phone cases, and much more. Everything that we raise gets reinvested right back into the channel so we can make more and better content for you. Again, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you soon.